Hey everybody, Eddie Heinzelman, One Louder Guitar Service. I'm in the shop this afternoon and thought I would do another short video for you. I get a question every now and then. People ask and wonder, what kind and gauge strings do I play? I have been playing D'Addario strings since 1985, so 35 years or so. They're my favorite strings. It goes way back. I'll tell the story here in a second. As far as gauges, all of my electrics are strung with 9s, 9 to 42s, New York XL. And then I have a couple guitars that are strung with 9.5s to 44, also New York XLs. I really like, since they came out with the NYXL strings, I really like the feel and tone and longevity of those strings. But I use the D'Addario XLs for decades. On my acoustics, I primarily use the NB or nickel bronze 11 to 52s. And I do have an acoustic guitar that is strung up with the nickel bronze 12 gauge, but I really prefer the 11 to 52s. It's totally up to you what string gauge you use. Many people want to know, what should I use? And people will tell you you need heavier strings for better tone and this, that, and the other. And I don't really agree. You need to play the string gauge that feels the most comfortable, that you're happy with, and that fits for your technique. Yes, Stevie Ray Vaughan played 11s. Lonnie Mack played 11s and 13s, and you know, that's fine. Players like Billy Gibbons, who is known for playing 7s, Jimmy Page, Tony Iommi play 8s. You can argue back and forth about string gauge and tone all you want, that's fine. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It's whatever you want to play and whatever feels best for you. So here's my story, how I ended up with D'Addario strings and how I ended up with the gauges that I did. Started playing guitar when I was 9 years old, and I played classical guitar, nylon strings. There really weren't any gauges. You bought a set of nylon strings, that's what you got. When I started playing electric guitar, the local store that I had access to didn't have a variety of strings. They had Fender, Black Diamond, and Dean Markley for the most part. And so you just went in and said, I need a set of strings, I play 9s, and he'd give you a pack of strings, and that was it. When I started gigging, so around age 13 or so, when I started playing in bands and actually started playing gigs, what I found is my sweat in my hand corrodes strings pretty quickly. And so I would get one show out of a set of strings, and then they would rust. I tried different brands of strings. For the most part at this point, you know, I started using Ernie Balls, Slinkies. That's what a lot of people were using, so that's what I decided to use. I tried boomers, I tried, you know, all kinds of different strings. Well, the store that I started teaching guitar at, they had D'Addario. And so right about this time, I also started studying jazz. And the recommendation for jazz was you need flat wound strings, you know, 11 gauge so you can't bend, you know, be real traditional jazz guy. I got D'Addario Chromes, 11 gauge, and I put them on an Epiphone Sheridan. That was my main jazz guitar for years, and all through college. And I really liked them. Of course, they're flat wounds, they lasted forever, which was pretty convenient. I decided to give regular D'Addarios a try. At that point, I found that I could get 2 gigs out of a set of strings. Hey, okay. my main concern initially with D'Addario was they lasted the longest of other strings. And then I found over time I really liked the feel of them. I didn't break strings as often with D'Addario, and my tone was pretty consistent. I liked that. So I started playing D'Addario. I thought these work great, and I played them ever since. Then a few years ago, when they introduced the NYXLs, thought I'd give them a try. And I really like the feel and the tone of those. And same thing, I'm lucky enough that I rarely break strings, but I've been using the NYXLs since they came on the market. So that's why I use D'Addario strings. Now, why do I use 9s? This is a longer story. Because I was using 11s in college, 11 flat wounds. I put, and I stopped playing hard rock. I started putting 10s on my Telecaster. Everybody told me when you play country music you had to use 10s because you had to get the tone, you had to be authentic, and so I used 10s. So for 10 years I played these strings. Right about that time I started having some issues with my fingers. And what was happening was my fingers would split the tips. It was very painful, and it was a really strange thing that was going on. I actually had tried at the time, this is the early 2000s, to get in touch with Tony Iommi because it was getting so bad that I was trying to run down how to get fake fingertips so I could play gigs. I never did get in touch with Tony or his management, so but I still am trying to this day. Anyway, okay, there you go. What would happen is, you know, you can kind of see your callus under your finger. I would feel my finger itch, you know, in a very specific spot, and usually a day later it would just split open, almost like a paper cut. So I went to a dermatologist, and he said what was essentially happening was skin trauma. I had been playing so much over the years. When I was in college, I practiced 6 hours a day, plus played 2 hours a day in ensembles and performances, and then gigged 2 to 4 nights a week. And then after college, practice and more gigging. And so 10 years of that, and my fingers were just damaged. And he said it was skin trauma. The skin cells in my fingers were working overtime. It's almost like, you know, when you learn to write and you get that little callus on the side of your finger from holding a pen or a pencil. My fingers were trying to build up more skin cells to protect itself, and then it would split wide open. And so I did end up putting kind of fake fingertips on my fingers. At that point the doctor was like, well, all doctors, and said, you need to just quit playing. And I said, I can't quit playing. What I ended up doing was dropping a gauge of strings across the board. I went to lighter strings, and I adjusted my technique. I needed to adjust the pressure that I used and my picking technique, and I lowered the gauge on my strings, and at that point my fingers healed, and they've essentially been healed ever since. I don't have problems with them splitting on the fingertips now. I do occasionally still have an issue on my right thumb where I hold my pick. It's going to be too close to see for the camera, but one of the things is you can see on my thumb some areas where the skin is still a little rough, and it's not a callus, but it's the skin. It's just from holding the pick and playing. Fortunately, again, it doesn't split, but that's what that was. That's why I ended up going to 9s. What I found, though, is I don't suffer from a difference in tone. That is my tone. I started on 9s. I've played 9s now for the last 15 years, 20 years. Golly, the last 20 years. It's what's comfortable. I do a lot of bending when I play. I'm a chicken picker and, you know, play country and Americana and roots rock, and so I bend a lot. Nines are certainly more conducive to being able to do a lot of different bends, especially for me. I'm going to do a video on hand health pretty soon, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in that video as well. That's why I play D'Addario New York XLs 9 to 42s. In the shop today, I have my G&L Blues Boy. I just wanted to bring this in real quick to double check it. I know the saddles have shifted. This is the main guitar that I've used last year on tour for, you know, T-style kind of telly-style guitar. I loaded it with Porter pickups. I love these pickups. It's the 9T, which is a P90 style pickup in the bridge, and then a wide range humbucker from Porter in the neck. It's a really interesting combination, and I really love it because it gives this guitar a bit more character than kind of a standard Telecaster style guitar. What I thought I'd do is talk about how I set up my guitars. Primarily, I like my guitars set up with a little bit of relief, kind of the standard relief, 0.10 of an inch. So when you check a guitar's relief, the one thing it's going to be hard to do, you're going to look down the fretboard on both sides. You're not going to be able to see it on this camera. And you're going to see right about middle of the neck, around 7th fret or so, if there's relief, you're going to see a little bow in the neck. If it's too much, it's going to be extreme. If it's flat, what you don't want to see is back bow or arch where it's going this way. Again, you're not going to really see this on the camera. But in order to check your relief, you're going to put a capo on the first fret. Not behind it, you're going to put it on the first fret. You're going to hold the guitar in playing position. You're going to hold down the last fret. You're going to fret the 6th string at the last fret. And then you're going to look at your string action gauge at the 12th fret and around the 7th fret. You see the line. You push the string down. The bottom of the 6th string should be on the line for the 0.01. You see there, without the string pushed, it's really at 0.04. Push that last fret down, it's going to go to 0.01. So that's how I know the relief is set the way I like it. When it comes to the action, then you switch over and you use 64ths of an inch. I typically like my first string at 3/64ths and my 6th string at 4/64ths. Typically, you're going to go 1/64th range from your first string to your 6th string action-wise. What that ends up doing for me is it gives me a low enough action, but then I can still bend. Now, I would like my action a little bit lower, so sometimes I may try to get 2.5/64ths out of it. This particular guitar, the way it's the frets, they're pretty good size frets. So if I go much below 3/64ths, the first couple strings will start to buzz. Now there is a way I could change the nut and different things in the frets and get a little lower action, but the way that you check the action, then you're going to hold the first fret down, the string at the first fret, and then measure your action at the 12th fret. You're going to do the exact same technique. You're going to, but you're going to use the 64ths instead of the string action gauge down here. I'm going to try really see if I can get this to do this for you. Hold on. You can see right here that the string is above, slightly above 4/64ths. When I press that down, it's slightly below 4. But in this particular case, I'm going to leave that actually. So it's really hard to see, I'm sorry with the camera, but I have the first string at 3/64, then they gradually increase to just barely 4/64 on the 6th string. And then once you have your action set, we dig into intonation. That's a completely different thing. That's my video today on the types of strings that I use. You may like a different brand. You may like Boomers or Ernie Ball's Slinkies, Dean Markley's. It doesn't matter. Whatever you are comfortable using. Same thing with gauges. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to use a certain gauge. Use whatever gauge you feel comfortable with and that you feel helps you become a better player. So again, thank you for stopping by. Please hit that subscribe button, and as always, stay tuned.